In this episode, we're going to show you how to get 75% of your time back to actually spend where you like. Welcome to your Consulting Business Podcast. My name is Russell Pearson, and this is episode number 58. In today's podcast, we're going to be talking about productivity, how to get more stuff done, and actually how to get time back to spend where you want to spend it. Now, that could be just putting back into your lifestyle to get 75% of the time back from your business to spend it in enjoying your life. And that sounds like a fantastic way to be. And it's something that the Select Consultant, which is really the concept behind everything we do here, is that's what the Select Consultant is all about. It's the opportunity to be selective in where you spend your time, who you work with, and how you do your work. Well, there's a little trick that I want to show you today that's going to enable you to identify where you should be spending your time, and so you're going to get more of that time back. So when you're working as a consultant, the challenge really is that it is you, which means that you might be part of a consulting organization, but certainly for a solo consultant, all the energy that actually goes into the things that you get done is coming from one individual. Now, eventually you will get a team on board, even if they're to help in a support role. But as a founder in your consulting business, the energy is you. So if you get sick, the business gets sick. If you run out of steam, the business runs out of steam. And as I've said plenty of times before, the energy that you actually spend in your business is like the past energy that you've spent, which is the resources, the time, the resources, the money, the team that you have around you now, and the energy you're going to spend in the future is the time. And that's the same limited amount of time that we all have on this planet, which is 24 hours in one day. No matter who you are in the world, you are working with that same amount of time. Now, the trick I'm going to show you today is how to utilize that time in an incredibly effective way. So I'm actually going to show you two things. The first is a model that I certainly use and a lot of other successful people use around the world that came off the back of Dwight Eisenhower's sort of the mythology behind him of being able to get stuff done. And so we're going to look at the matrix that he created, and that's the storytelling. I'm not 100% sure if that's who created it, but it's called the Eisenhower Matrix, so I imagine that he did. And then I'm also going to show you at the end of this episode one of the most important focuses for your time in your consulting business. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the tablet so I can show you this matrix. So we'll jump over here. Here I am. Hello. And I'm going to draw up a four-sided matrix. So we'll look at it like this. Well, that's probably the most terrible matrix you've ever seen. But in essence, it's a square-ish sort of shape. Let me actually clean that up a little bit because that looks terrible. All right, so we'll go through that. So in this matrix, there are, of course, four sides and four quadrants. Well, let's go to the top and we'll call it urgent. So there are things in this world that are urgent. Absolutely there are. But there are also things that are not urgent. There are things that are important. We'll put that in there. Important. And there are things that are, guess what? Not important. And really, the trick to this Eisenhower method is about categorizing any of the things on your to-do list into one of these four quadrants. And so to give you some examples, so urgent and important, there is a fire in the house that needs to be put out. There's a fire, right? So we've got to action that. Something that's not important and urgent is someone complaining. And the complaining could be something that maybe they've complained, like, believe it or not, that word actually says complain. They could have complained over and over and over again about the same thing, which you have no ability to fix. There's maybe just someone just whinging and having a complaint just to make themselves feel better. So that's the example. What's another example? So we've got not urgent and not important. And that could be something like a TV show. Right? Now, in some worlds, it's very important. But it could also be something like spam email. All right, spam email, or an email that's unsolicited email that comes to you. That's a really good example of not important and not urgent, especially if it's irrelevant, which is the case for almost all spam email. The other thing is important but not urgent. Now, this is an interesting one. So these are the things that we need to do for a successful life and business, but if we leave them, they'll eventually become urgent, even though they're not urgent right now. So it's things like maintenance. It could be of your house, or it could be of your car, or it could be of your stuff inside the business. There are certain maintenance activities that we need to do, and there's a way to address those. And because they're not urgent, they can often find ourselves in a situation where we just leave them. And then, no maintenance on the car becomes the car breaking down. No maintenance on the house falls down around you. So you want to put these things in a place to make sure that they are done. So let me look at each of the areas that we quantify here can be dealt with effectively. Now, if it is urgent and important, like a fire or your child has just broken their arm or something, what are we going to do? We're going to do something. So we're going to action something right now. So do something about it now is really the point. If it's urgent and important. Now, if it's not urgent, not urgent but not important, we're going to move over to the diagonal and delete it. So we're going to remove it from our life. We don't need it anymore. So the spam email is the obvious example. We can literally delete it and not ever have to think about it again. But there are all sorts of other requests on our time which we can ignore. There are so many people who want something from us, especially as we start to get successful, that it might feel like you need to do something about it. But on reflection, a lot of these are not important and not urgent.
I wanted to quickly jump in and remind you about russellpearsonprograms.com. We put all sorts of resources specifically for consultants on that page, and if you go there right now, you'll see that there are some new resources available absolutely free for you to download. So go to russellpearsonprograms.com. Now, back to the show.
So we will delete them. Now, if it is urgent, but it's not overly important. Again, it could be something like the complaints department or whatever it might be. Let's delegate. Let's get someone else to look after it because it doesn't deserve our attention unless it is important and urgent. Basically, if it's not important, we shouldn't be focusing on it. And so this urgent but not important part is where I will tend to put some support teams to look after these areas. Sometimes you might actually find that it's not that urgent. People might be screaming about something, but it might not actually be urgent, and so you could actually delete it. But that's your choice to assess the current situation. So, for instance, if a client or a prospect has an issue and they're urgently wanting a response, you can delegate some of your team members to maybe get back to them to at least have a first line of communication so that there's some sort of response. They tend to be very reactive things that are urgent but not important. Now, there's one other area of this as well, which is important but not urgent, and this is where we want to diarize. Diarize. Now, I'm using the Australian English, which is S, not a Z, or a Z. And diarizing is really the key to that. Now, putting it in your diary is one of the best things that you can be doing regarding time management. And I wanted to leap off from this and talk about the next step. But before I do, let me just really quickly run over it again. So there are things that are urgent, there are things that are not urgent, there are things that are important, there are things that are not important. If it's urgent and important, we need to do something about it. Otherwise, there's going to be some form of catastrophe. If it's urgent but not important, we can delegate it to other people. Now, it might even be for the person who is screaming about the issue, we can delegate to them to give them an idea of what they can do to sort it out. Right? So if it's important but not urgent, we want to make sure that we diarize it so we can put it in our diary to get it done at a specific time. And if it's not important and not urgent, we will delete it. And so with this, there are some areas that we may want to focus on for ourselves. Now, one of those areas is definitely going to be, this do section. If there's important and urgent, we're likely to be the best person to engage with it right now. If you can, you can put team members in to look after these important but urgent things so that you are less reactive. Anything that got too urgent but important usually means a failure of the second one, which was to diarize things that were not urgent but important, and let them sort of become urgent. So that this area here, which I'm going to highlight by putting a green line around it, this diarize area. I think that this area can be that's an interesting thing. I think this area is one of the most important areas in your business. Your ability to manage the business pretty much lives in this diarization area where we actually schedule in when activities are going to be done. We're also going to delegate around the traps to either our team members or other people, and where possible, we're going to delegate as many things as we can off our plate. But every now and then, there's going to be things that we want to look after. And if you're working very much in the business, they're going to be reactionary things, often to clients, or at least proactive things for clientele and for business activity. But once we move to a more of a management position and potentially be either an owner or at least have a focus to be the manager of our business rather than the doer of the things in our business, then we would move much more to that diarized component so we can start planning things out rather than things happening to us. Now, your goal, ideally, in running your consulting business, in other words, working on the business, is to find ways to increase the time that you work on the business rather than getting stuck in the business. And I would recommend that you at least start with 1 hour. Now, you may find right now that you're incredibly busy and there's a lot going on in your life. But the opportunity for you is to start taking time in your diary to do specific tasks. And the first task, I believe, is to work on the business. Because if you can actually take an hour to work on the business, that hour's job is to say, how can I increase 1 hour to 2 hours? How can I increase 2 hours to 4 hours, and so on, so that maybe at the end of it, you've got a full day that's working on the business where other people are scrambling just trying to work within it. And so your ability to work on the business is going to allow you to add systems that give you leverage, add team members that enable you to step back from doing some of the work, to improve your processes, to improve the way that you actually go about working in your frameworks and the other things that you bring to the client's table. You're going to improve. Okay, so the focus would be to create that hour that creates 2 hours, 2 hours to 4 hours, 4 hours to 8 hours eventually. But here's the key. That hour is with the most important person in your business, which, if you haven't already guessed or you haven't heard me say before, is you. Which means that if your best client wants to take that hour away, the role is to say no, because you are the most important person in your business. Remember, if you get sick, the business gets sick. If you run out of steam, the business runs out of steam. If you lose your best client, you can get another best client. Yeah, if your third best client or second best client actually wanted to take the appointment of your best client, would you just give up that appointment to number 2? You wouldn't, right? You're going to look after that best client. Well, in the business, to work on the business and give you the capability of actually having time to focus, time to leverage, time to grow, time to build, time to think, really, about the steps you're going to take in this growth process. The number one person in the business is definitely going to be you. Until you're out of the business as the business owner, and then your team will be the most important people in the business. Until that happens, you are the most important person in the business because you are continuing to drive the business. You are the energy that is put in. Now, you might be looking at your calendar and you're going, oh, I can't even find 1 hour. What can I do about that? All right, go out a week. Can you see an hour there? Go out 2 weeks. Can you see an hour? If you go out far enough, you will find an hour that you can diarize. But from that point on, have it a recurring meeting with yourself that happens every week. Now, I did this years ago. I think the first time I did this must have been 2006, something like that. And I created that hour. and it was 6 o'clock on a Monday evening. I'd put it outside of business hours. I recommend putting it in business hours because this is working on the business. But anyway, I put it outside of business hours, and I end up doing that as a process, is a ritual for my business for the next 7 years. And that 1 hour was enough to actually help me grow my business significantly to the point where I had 12 team members looking after so many of the logistics. And I wouldn't have been able to do that had I not taken that time to focus. Now, you can't make time. Right? We can't invent time. We have the same 24 hours in a day, like I said before, but we can take time. And so you go out in your diary, whether it's 1 week, 2 week, or more, and find at least 1 hour that you can put in as a recurring meeting. And that's an appointment with the most important person in your business. And so you keep that appointment, right? You don't shift it. There are a number of consultants I've spoken to over the years who will see the client as being the most important person. But the reality is you can always get more clients. If you run out of steam, if you run yourself into the ground, if you don't take time to grow the business, no one else is going to do it for you. So this is one of the ways that you're actually going to get this time back. And if we go back to this diagram, we really only want to be focusing on one of these areas. So whether it's, let me just remove some of these. Whether we want to actually focus because we're working inside the business, we can focus on the doing of the business. Let me just grab another color. Yeah, we can be focusing on the doing of the business. That means we're going to get 75% of this time back to focus on the doing aspects of the business. We delegate what we can delegate. We diarize in for later. And then when we reach that point in the diary, it will become urgent because that's when the diary says that we need to do it. And so diarizing becomes a great skill. Now, over time, you hopefully find yourself in a scenario where you've got team members who can do the doing, and you will be focused on the diarization. All right, but either way, you're going to get 75% of your time back just using this very simple Eisenhower Matrix. Hopefully you found that valuable. If you did, please give us a like. I'd love to hear what was an insight that you got from today's session. Leave it in the comments. If you are listening to this on the audio podcast, because we have the audio podcast and all sorts of podcasting platforms, the podcasting platform of your choice, I'd love to get a review. What have you found useful? What would you like more of? Leave a review for us. We really appreciate those comments. Definitely subscribe for more episodes just like this. My name is Russell Pearson, and if you haven't already, go to russellpearsonprograms.com. Right now we've got a resource over there you can download absolutely free, and the resource hopefully is there, but you might be watching this in the future, is about becoming the select consultant and how you can become that select consultant who gets to choose who they work with, when they work, and how they work, so they can spend their time where they like. My name is Russell Pearson. I am also a select consultant, and until next time, stay passionate, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.